Gene Joshin.
That fits.
I'm shipping you. Gene Zone.
Slash fiction. Hello and welcome to Crackcast number 312. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is the magical Pitface. Hi, Pitface.
Hi, guys.
And Tan Serene. Hello, Tan.
Hello.
And of course, Mr. Baines.
Hello.
The rock the Quackcast is founded on. The sun that we
if
all
you're
orbit.
Talking about personality.
The stone.
The stone.
That was your nickname in school, wasn't it?
Yes, it was one of them, yes.
So we're going to be chatting about drawing and art. Well, tips and tricks, really. Not drawing, but clever tricks that you use to make good pictures out of nothing, or complicated effects that really aren't complicated to do. And I'm calling it Happy Little Trees.
Happy Little Trees.
Happy Little Trees. Which is, of course, a reference to
the great Bob Fosse, who is an artist.
Bob Saget, I was thinking.
Yes, the great Bob Saget, who is a talented artist. Painter, I believe, or something like that.
I've no idea what he had an afro, that's all I know. An afro and a beard.
Right, okay, yeah.
And he loved his little happy trees, and who knows what his real name was? It's a mystery. I don't think anyone knows.
Oh no, okay. It's Bob, yeah.
Bob.
I think if you punch in Happy Little Trees, you can find out.
Yeah. Fascinating to watch this guy. Brilliant little TV show, and he sort of showed you how to do paintings using clever tricks, so you could do complicated effects without actually going in and painting every little leaf on every tree and all that kind of stuff. So what he would do is he would just squelch his brush in a special way, which would make it look like a tree, and squelch it again to make it look like really beautiful fluffy clouds. But it's tricks, basically.
Oh,
Clever,
yeah, very nice.
Tricks, yeah. So that's what I'm going to try and fill a whole hour with on a Crackcast. Tricks in Photoshop or GIMP or Manga Studio, whatever you use. They're all the same.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, to achieve effects. But before we get into that, let's talk about the featured comic. Well, at least, who's going to be talking about the featured comic? Who did the featured
Hawaii Tiger. Oh, Gene Joke.
Yeah, which means I'm going to be talking about it because he never records.
Okay, you just read his essays.
I do, and then I add a lot of stuff in when I look at the comic. So,
okay.
The featured comic for this week was Happy Little Trees. No, it was called Mr. Valdemar. No, that was something else. No, okay. The featured comic is The World Outside of Time. So, take it away, Mr. Gene Joke or Mr. Ozone Ocean. Tell us about the world outside of time.
Mr. Joke. Mr. Ocean.
Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and I'm going to be reading out Mr. Gene Joke's feature, and his feature for the week was The World Outside of Time. Tsuku is born one day into a mysterious world where she is given a purpose. But she isn't like the other people there. She is more curious and dreams. She questions the world around her and their mysterious creator. It's a manga-styled line art, and it's combined with coloured pencils and later even digital colouring to give it a distinct, otherworldly fantasy look. Read The World Outside of Time by Liz Inverse. It's a very pretty looking comic. Jinjo has chosen a beautiful rainbowy kind of image for his cover picture for the comic. And if you have a look at it, it's a very creative take on slightly manga influenced style. It's quite good. It's well presented too. The artist, Lizinverse or Liz Inverse, has given her comic a nice bit of a template too, you know, customized buttons, title image, and colored creative looking background, which is so much appreciated by readers. I mean, at least by me anyway. And I read a hell of a lot of Drunk Duck comics because I have to feature them all the time. And it's nothing worse than backgrounds that don't go with the comics, or especially, you know, plain white ones. It just looks so they just drain everything out of the comics. Very few comics go well with a plain white background. I wish we could make the site's default background be black or something, which would just go so much better with so many more comics than the white one that, you know, a lot of people don't even know how to change or don't even realize they can change it. But anyway, so Liz Inverse has done a very good job. It's a good looking comic. There's not too many pages. It's only about, let's see, 20, it's like, you know, just over 30 pages. So there's not much to weigh you down as a reader. You could easily go through it and be ready and waiting for more. And it's pretty good work. It's not too realistic. You know, there's the artist obviously has a bit of a scope to improve, but that's as it goes, and it's a good looking, well presented piece of work with everything just looks really good. It's on its way to being a really fantastic piece of work, and it's enjoyable right now. So have a read of The World Outside of Time. This is the omnibus, obviously. I mean, at least that's what it says, the omnibus. So enjoy. And that was our featured comic by Jinzo Notion. So,
yay!
Next up, we have the featured music by Mr. Gun Wallace, and Gun Wallace has given us the music for Mr. Valdemar and Other Gothic Tales, which is an interesting titled comic.
Intriguing title. I haven't seen that comic, actually.
Yeah, well, you must have a look if you could type that into the Drunk Duck search engine, which is rather...
Whoa, Drunk Duck has a search engine now? Holy crumbs.
Yeah, I just put it in the other day with my skills.
Good for you.
No, we've always had our search function as it is. So Mr. Valdemar and Other Gothic Tales. I haven't really looked at this comic myself. I'm just looking at it now. Oh, yes, I have. Oh, my God, this comic. I think Kai featured this, or Jinjo, but beautiful.
Oh, yes, I know this one too, actually. Just didn't know the title. Beautiful.
Yeah. Title is rather enigmatic, which I think is a good marketing technique for your comic. If you have an enigmatic title, you can get people in. But oh my God, it looks fantastic. I think it's a bunch of short stories, is it? That's what it was going to be. But yeah, fantastic looking work. So the music that Gun Wallace has given us, the tinkling crystal notes of a piano are paired with the dark woodiness of a mournful cello and touches of strings to give us a haunting gothic soundscape. So take it away, Mr. Gun Wallace.
Oh, fantastic description again.
Oh, thank you. that was the music by Mr. Gum Wallace. Thank you for that, Gum Wallace. And read Mr. Valdemar and Other Gothic Tales to get a real feel for the music, or a real feel for the theme of it. Pair them together, that's what I'm saying. Pair them. All right. So the tips and the tricks, the happy little trees. What are you were telling me that you had some clever tips and tricks.
Yes, I don't have many. I'm not such an artist. It would be hopefully Pit Face and Tangerine will return, because after they said hello, they stepped out for a moment. But hopefully they'll come back and they can add their stuff into it. They're very talented artists, as are you. I definitely have some tricks and tips. Some are old school comic tips and stuff like that.
All right.
That I've learned from way back. A lot of people listening, if people are listening, they probably know this stuff already. The idea of a brick wall. When you draw like a brick wall, you can just draw a little cluster of bricks.
Yeah.
Literally 2 or 3 bricks, and just spread those little clusters. Just kind of do a little cluster here, a little cluster there, a little cluster there, and that gives the effect of a brick wall.
Yeah. Okay. So what you mean there is you've got like a big red area, brick colored, and then you only draw in like 3 of the bricks or whatever, and then you can actually copy and paste that to another or just physically draw in, another 3 bricks over here, there, and you create the illusion of a whole detailed wall, where you're only doing small parts, which is a good idea.
It is a good idea, and it's very effective. I mean, I find a lot of the times that, and I've fooled around with it a little bit, but I find that definitely in a simpler style, which I draw in, it looks better.
Yeah.
Drawing the entire brick wall would be time consuming, but even more than that, it would be distracting. It would be too much detail. It
actually looks bad because
exactly, yeah,
you're taking away from the main work. So my default way of drawing is to fill in the whole bloody area with the full detail, and to my cost, I've learned every time that that's a bad thing to do, but I can't help myself. So it's always
you do have a more realistic style, though. But that's where it gets more complicated to decide when your style is more realistic.
True, but it's always a good idea to use sparing detail rather than to go all the way. It is a good idea to err on the side of less detail. So
yeah, because you need to focus on what matters. And I never find your comic pages to be jumbled or confusing. You even with a lot of detail.
Oh, thank you.
Like the way you do your angles, I can generally tell what to focus on. It's not a big mess or something like that, So
I think what happens though is, say with my work, in the drawing stage, I used to, not so much now, I used to do every bloody thing, and then when it came to the color stage, I'd realize I've drawn in too much. I'm gonna have to rub out all this stuff and then just focus on stuff. Yeah. So it's rather I would brain damaged way of
but it keeps you sharp. All that practice you're getting. Yes. Doing all that drawing.
Exactly.
I mean, you might even keep your backgrounds black and white and your characters in color, or the important things in color. That I don't know if that would work for certain styles, certain comics. It would work.
Yep, those are all good things, because like backgrounds in comics are something that people often skimp on, especially if you're only just starting, and that really detracts. If you don't have anything in the background, then you can't place things in a world, even if you're doing a simplified comic like a comic strip with incredibly stylized characters. If you don't have a proper anything in the background, then you can never really conceptualize these things as taking place anywhere. It's just a void. So
even a simplified, like a Calvin and Hobbes, which is, many people consider the best newspaper strip
Yeah.
or the best cartoon. A lot of plain white panels, a lot of just a little hint of something, but then very regularly you'd have a full background, giving you a sense of place. You'd have this huge forest, or some of the fantasy sequences, obviously.
Yeah, which are amazing.
Or, the neighborhood, the panorama of snowmen or whatever. There'd be a sort of the backgrounds behind the sledding and like rivers and like all this kind of stuff to give you a strong sense of place, like you said.
Exactly. And because they did that, then he could get away with having a panel with just clear, nothing in there at all, and that worked fine. So that is actually another trick. So have detail, and then you can get away with having no detail. Background, as long as you have something there to show for it. And even when you do have, simplified backgrounds, all you need is like a desk or a window, some kind of prop, and you ground the characters. Something simple as that. So you can. Yeah,
it's not like something has to be photorealistic and like blah blah blah. Yeah, that's a good point. Just a sense of, like, does it give you a sense of where you are? And once that's established, as you said, like you can have your plain white panels or your
and
minimal panels. Yeah, true.
Because it allows you to focus on what is actually important. Because in a comic strip, rarely is the background going to feature as anything in. The point of it is the character and the joke. So that's what you're focusing on.
Right.
Yeah. So it does work by just having characters in white space, but grounding them to give them a sense of conceptualizing them in their world. So yeah, it's
right.
Doing that works. But I'll talk about some of my Photoshop tips and tricks.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about pen and paper ones first. We'll organize it that way, and then we'll move into digital later. That way it's kind of,
organized. Okay,
it's somewhat structured. I'll think of another one. 3 diagonal lines shows a window. But that's, let's see. I'm just trying to think if I have any other. I don't know if I have any other than the brick wall. It's my only art tip. Other than the ones you already covered, sort of the minimum amount of lines to get the point across. In terms of facial expression, in terms of defining a character, is something to shoot for.
All right.
Because more lines makes it confusing, Again, unless you're working in a super realistic style or something like that.
A big thing I've found is in drawing faces, especially if you're intending to color them, the less detail, the better. So you want to simplify, even if you're doing an ultra realistic face, don't draw all the expression lines and crow's feet and all that kind of stuff, because you could do those with your color and it works fine. And even not even have it. If you want to do someone, as often we do in comics, the beautiful people, we want to draw, people looking good. Never draw any lines in the face, because it doesn't add character expression. It just makes them look ugly and old. And unfortunately, that's what happens.
It's very odd that, if you draw them more realistic, you have a photo of a gorgeous person, you add their, whatever the lines are called, the cheeks on the side of the, coming down from the nose to the mouth or whatever. You draw that, you draw the bumps and and like anything, but every line seems to age the character 10 years or more.
Exactly. So never add any lines. So, and if you're doing someone old, then all you have to do is just put in the minimum of line work. You don't have to do, 10,000 wrinkles. Just put lines the side of the mouth.
Yep.
One
line on the side of the mouth, like a line on the neck.
Yeah.
Below the eye. It's amazing how just a tiny bit really ages a character.
It's simple as better. Yeah, it's very simple. One of my another good trick for speedy sort of working, especially if you're doing something more realistic as I do it. But, even if you're doing something less realistic, is if you're having if your background is just a landscape, if you're not having to draw buildings or anything like that, don't draw it in. Don't draw anything in. Don't draw mountains or trees or anything. Just draw your characters and you can paint all the background in. Because... And what I mean by painting it in is because mountains and like sky and landscape and trees is all less blobby shapes. It takes less effort to do those as big blobby shapes than it does actually to physically draw everything in.
Right.
And it looks better.
And it actually looks better. Yeah, exactly. You're not really sacrificing anything.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, very cool.
That is a better way of doing it. It's quicker and, easier. So that's a good tip and a trick. A happy little...
Very tips and tricks, yeah.
Fill them all with happy trees.
Happy little tree. Yeah. Yes, very cool. So you work in Photoshop. You do all your initial drawing in Photoshop?
Yeah. Everything is digital. And there are so many good things you could do with digital tools. Gradients are one of the best things you can use.
Oh, yes.
Because you just select an area and then you just, select your colors that you want to do your gradient. That's like, light blue to dark blue for a sky. For the ocean, light blue to dark blue or light green to dark green or whatever. And then you just fill the area. And there you have an almost photorealistic effect just from a mouse click. So gradients are one of the best, easiest bloody things to ever use. Especially if you use them sparingly. You don't want to do the old 1990s comic style of overuse of gradients. Actually, it's even now they overuse gradients, and it looks disgusting. So don't do that. Just use it to fill in your space. So gradients are a good tip. The happy little tree thing is a very good kind of point, because the way he did those happy little trees was with brushes, right? So you get like specific kinds of brushes, like big brushes with a lot of bristles, or fan brushes that spread out, and you can do like great effects with those with paint. So your version in digital art is custom brushes, and you can download these from DeviantArt, or there's a lot of free ones online. You could make them yourself in Photoshop, in GIMP, Manga Studio. They all have ability to do this. And what custom brushes means is that the brushes are designed so they achieve a certain effect when you draw. So you can have like a grass brush. So when you paint it on, it like automatically does a grass effect. So you can create a whole field of grass just by, doing a few brush strokes. So that is incredibly... You can have blood splatter brushes, and it would give you perfect blood splatters all over the place, which would take ages to draw and would probably look terrible if you drew them. But these blood splatter brushes will work for you. Leaves for trees, cobblestones, hair on your characters, all sorts of things. I've cloud brushes, happy little trees. Literally, it gives you those effects. I've created some of my own custom brushes for effects, which is a bit more advanced. You have to really know what you're doing. Well, it's not that hard, but it's, my God, that is one of the best things. If you're doing digital work, learn how to do custom brushes, or at least download them. They're very useful. Yes. Very useful. I've got a million of these custom tips and tricks that would be very valuable to people who do digital art. Anyone who works exactly like me could use them.
Well, like applicable to many different people, obviously. People would customize their brushes differently, obviously, to
suit
whatever they're doing. Yeah, that's neat.
they're very useful. You can use them for your mouse. Like you could use them in Typical Strange if you wanted to just add some flair.
Yeah.
They're fantastic for doing things like hair if you don't want to do every single hair strand.
I prefer to draw every strand of hair.
Yeah, that's important.
Yes.
I've had custom brushes to do like skin pores if you ever wanted to do that kind of thing. You can do the pores in someone's skin. Anything that involves slightly random repeating patterns. Custom brushes are good for that because you don't want to fill in all that bloody space yourself. So doing that is good.
Water, I guess, like sort of the...
Yeah, so...
Sort of. Not exactly the same thing, I guess, but... Yeah.
Well, what is... With water or sand or things like that, what you want is a sort of a grainy, rough effect. So using a custom brush for that is a good idea. But not having it so so representational, like with the grass or something like that. You just want a brush that gives you a rough, grainy kind of effect. And I found those very useful for doing sea splashes or sand in deserts and things like that. You can really, or sky as well for clouds. You can really give yourself like a really rough kind of oil painted or watercolor painted kind of effect. So those are really, really excellent for those kind of randomized kind of effects that you want to achieve. So
right,
good to use. Let's see. Oh, drawing hair. Now this is a sort of an old school thing with pen and paper, like you were saying. So manga is a really good thing to look at for drawing hair because they master these simple effects for drawing hair. You don't have to do anything clever to draw hair, like, drawing every strand. All you have to do is realize that hair is reflective. So you need...
Oh, right. Yeah. Yes. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So you need a highlight at the top. Then you need dark effect where you do, most of the like really dark, almost black, like line, just made up of like rough vertical lines for your dark area, and then below that you do like suggested lines for the rest of the hair, and that gives you almost a realistic effect, a good stylized realistic effect for hair. So that's a good tip.
That's true. Yeah.
Good tip.
The shading highlights, and then these sort of 1 or 2 or 3 strands. Like it's kind of the same principle as the brick wall.
Precisely. Say in things like American comics or Archie, they sort of do the same kind of thing, but it's not as advanced as it is in manga. So manga is where you really need to look for that kind of thing. They've also mastered the eyeball.
Yes, a lot of focus on the eye, on a detailed eye, and then a simplified rest of the face.
Yeah, unfortunately, their eyes are a bit big, but that does really it helps you really recognize how well those are done. So if you look at the way they do their eyes, again, that's reflection is what they're working on. A lot of simplified reflection. So eyes are usually made up of, obviously you've got the white sclera, the iris, and the pupil. Those are the main things. But all of that is reflective. So you should have your reflections glowing across all of those. So all you need is like some kind of white dot, which is comes from your light source. So if you're in a room, you might have a number of light sources. So you'll have like 2 or 3 white dots. If you're outside, you'll only have 1 because the sun is the only powerful light source. But the trick is to have that going over all those 3 circles, the sclera, the iris, and the pupil. And that makes it look realistic. If the white dot is only on the pupil, only on the iris, it doesn't work because all of those surfaces are reflective.
Oh, yes. Good advice. That's really good.
I'm just sort of listing these off as points, really, because
Yes.
it's not a
That is good
narrative
stuff.
sort of thing.
No, exactly. No, that's good stuff, though. It's very true. I've been working on eyes a little bit and watching a little bit of an art tutor on YouTube called Jazza.
Oh, really?
Draw with Jazza.
Draw with Jazza.
Very talented dude, and he explained very much like you just did how eyes work and how to draw them. He had some additional advice on sort of shading under the eyelid. The shading doesn't cover the highlight, the highlight dot or blob or whatever.
Yeah.
But it covers the rest of the eye, so you shade over the iris. The pupil's already black, and it really gives the eye a more like the character doesn't look stoned. It makes the character look like more alive and more sort of normal.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good point. You have two shadows on the eye typically because the eye is, of course, a sphere. So there's going to be a shading, as you said, at the bottom of the eye, just above the eyelid. There is shading there. Also at the top of the eye, you have shadows from the eyelashes, just underneath the eyelid. So yeah, if you want to be really smart, then you'll do do all the lines of the eyelashes in a shadow. But yeah, that's a good point. That gives the eye the three-dimensional effect, so it's not just a flat circle or lemon shape or whatever. You've actually given it some kind of three-dimensionality. There we are. Dimensionality. Yes. Other things that are reflective, a good tip and a trick. So metal stuff, like I do a lot of metal in my comics, usually little gold buttons and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And gold is an interesting thing. Well, at least brass or whatever, yellow metal. It's very, very easy to do that well. And once you've mastered how to do it, then, the world's your oyster. You can add little shiny metal effects to everything. So, the trick to doing shiny metal, or at least shiny gold, is say you have a button, a round circle. So the majority of your thing is going to be the mid-tone, which is going to be ochre or an orangey brown. So you do it all in orangey brown. Then your highlight is going to be bright yellow. So you have a little dot of that. But surrounding your highlight, or at least bordering your highlight, is your dark tone, which is going to be dark brown or dark umber. So that's all you have. Those three colors are the things that make it up. Okay. You can add white as well, but the white has to border between the yellow highlight and the dark umber. And that's what makes it real looking. So that's the simple trick to metal effects. And that
very cool.
It works in chrome as well, but you substitute the umbers for greys or even blue. But actually chrome is I shouldn't really get into that because it's a bit more advanced, because then you start doing yellows and blues and greys and stuff like that. So I won't get into that. Right. For gold, it's very easy.
Okay.
Let's see. A good digital art effect is shadows. So.
Yes. Yeah.
The easy way to do shadows, if you want to do that, because shadows really make things look real. I mean, that can sort of bulk up the immersion of your pages and your artwork if you've got good shadows. But shadows are hard to draw. If you want to actually draw in shadows, you have to sort of work out what is a dark tone in a scene. And, it can be painful to do, especially if, say, you're drawing a character and you're doing the actual shadows on its face, and then shadows created in the backgrounds and stuff like that. You have to work out what are the tones that are the darker tones of these colors that make up all those different colors and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do any of that. The easy way to do shadows, I'm almost like doing an infomercial here. You don't have to do any of that.
This is great stuff. I'm on the edge of my seat learning how to do shading and shadows better.
Oh, yeah. So if you're doing, this is like a tip for digital art. If you're doing digital art, all you have to do is just create a new layer, set it to multiply. And you can do that in GIMP, you can do that in all these different, like Photoshop, all these different things. They all allow you to have a multiply layer. So you set it to multiply, then you just simply draw over things in grey, different tones of grey, and that will give you your shadows. And because all it does is the grey is transparent. So everything beneath can be seen underneath the grey, but the grey darkens whatever it goes over.
Right. So you have a flesh tone and a red jacket and a blue pair of pants, and it will just darken each of those colors.
It does.
To the darker version of itself and everything. Yeah, for sure.
And it looks great. It looks better than if you actually went and drew these shadows all in. But you don't have to. All you have to do is draw all your shadows in one color, the grey, and it works perfectly. So, and doing it that way means you're not destroying the artwork underneath. You can rub those shadows out and do them again and do them again and again and again. And, keep on doing it until you've got the effect you want. It's super easy and it's non-destructive.
And it's free.
It's free. It's free.
It's absolutely free.
With a set of steak knives. If you call now, we'll throw them in and a lifetime guarantee. So yeah, the multiply shadow thing. I don't think enough people use that. It's so easy and it's so good, and you can do a lot of extra things with that. So one of the things that you can do is like if you want a beautiful dappled sunlight effect. So like, leaves, the shadows of leaves on the ground and that kind of thing. So you just do a multiply layer and draw all those leaf shapes in grey, and you'll have the perfect dappled sunlight effect. Or you don't even have to do that. You could just do like round circle blobs of grey. Blob, 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 blob. And you've got a dappled effect. It's just so simple. And it looks so great and it's so easy.
Oh, wow, very nice.
So do this. Do it.
Do it now. Get on that multiply layer. Operators are standing by.
To take your call.
To take your calls.
Do it.
Get your multiply layers. Yeah.
It works. You don't even have to like paint in blobs. You can say if you've got like a page and you think, where is my focus here? Where is the kind of the area where I want people to, where I want the focus of the action to be, where I want things to pop. I want it on this panel. So you can darken the rest of the panels. Like I want this panel dark a bit more. I want this panel like less dark. And you could do that with a multiplier layer just by like doing grey shapes over each one of these things. And you can set the tones of each area just by so simple to do that. So
do you just go over the grey a second time to get a darker version, or you just kind of select that area? People probably already know this. I don't know, but
well, yeah,
select the area and then
you can select the area and fill it, or as you said, you could do it again. So you could do many multiply layers over the top of each other, and layer them and like do extra like dark effects and keep doing it. If you want to do it that way, you could do it all in one, just simple. Or you can be complicated and do as many as you want and just keep on doing it. Or say if you've done one of them and it's like the perfect kind of shadows, but you think, I just didn't do it dark enough. What should I just go over this and like do it again or do it a darker grey? No, you can just copy that multiply layer and have two multiply layers over the top of each other now. Which exact copies of each other, and it will darken it even more. and you can keep on doing that to darken it and darken it. So it's so easy.
There you go.
It's a good thing to do. All right.
Yes, very nice.
The
This is good stuff. I'm like excited to go try this stuff. I don't do much digital art really. I do a little bit.
Well, your colors
not
digital, isn't it?
My colors are in digital, and I sort of messed around in doing similar things to what you're saying. I did a lot of my coloring in Paint.net.
Yeah.
Which I hear the newer versions are riddled with viruses. So I haven't.
Oh no.
My computer kind of died. When I draw in the animation software, I do something a little bit different, like kind of like a multiply layer. I'll just go to a new layer, like go to gray, make it semi-transparent, and then reduce the opacity or whatever. And then
all right.
It pretty much works like you're saying. Custom brushes, though, I've never played around with that.
Well,
but I'm excited to try some of this stuff.
Custom brushes work even better if you've got a tablet, but they're fine with a mouse as well. They can really up your game with a mouse, so it's definitely worth trying. Speaking of layers, another great effect is going at, like you said, reducing the opacity. But say when you've done your finished work, you've done all your artwork, and you think, everything here is there's too much detail, or the colors are too strong, and it just doesn't work. So one of the best things and the easiest, simplest things you can do is just make a new layer over the top, use a gradient or something like that. Gradients are fantastic for this. Select an area, use your gradient, and then reduce the opacity of that layer, and then you've got this nice blurring effect over the top of your artwork, which can give you so many good effects. Say if you want like a sun glare over a scene or a light glare, you want to just blur out some of the detail. Say you haven't got very much detail in a scene, you've simplified everything, you've simplified too much, or you've made a mistake in your artwork, you're not happy with how it looks. We just do this like reduced opacity, like glare over the top, and it makes the artwork pop. It makes everything look more realistic. It just looks fantastic. It's another thing that is so easy to do. You could paint it, but gradient looks a lot better if you can do a gradient. And that's what all the professional comic artists do. It takes like 2 seconds to do. Super simple. Like the easiest way to do it is paint it and reduce the opacity. But the gradients are the best way, and selecting an area like in your panel and then doing a gradient is the best way to do it, because you're really customizing it to the space. But it's really, really good to do. One of the best things to do is don't select your character, select everything else like in the background, and then do the selection, then do your gradient, and then reduce the opacity. Then you've got like a brilliant way of directing focus to your character while blurring out the background, but blurring it out in a way that makes it look good. So it's excellent.
That's definitely something to try. Yeah, you were talking about that the other week with your recent page.
Oh yeah. That's what I had actually done in the most recent version of Pinky TA. And make sure that layer is over the top of your line work. It's over the top of everything. Mm-hmm. That way, everything is blurred out similarly. It's a really, really great effect. You'd be surprised how good that makes things look. So use it.
Very nice.
That brings me to like another effect, which is, this is something that classical painters use. It's called atmospheric perspective. This involves the use of gradients again. There's a number of ways of achieving good perspective, depth in a picture. So gradients give you an atmospheric perspective. So things closer pop more, they're darker. Things further away are lighter, they fade out into the distance. So that's why gradients are a great easy trick to use for backgrounds. Doing that opacity thing is a good way of doing it as well, because that helps you blur out the detail. So if you're using a gradient, you can fade out the detail. A gradient in like a reduced opacity, or you can like add multiply to a gradient effect, and that's, say if you've got a dark and a light, that helps you, blur out the gradient, blur out the detail more selectively, more cleverly. So you just play around with those things and just see what happens when you use those tools. Yeah. So, but the other thing about atmospheric perspective is it's not just doing that kind of stuff. You can actually paint over the top of your detail, or just add a bit of blurriness and less blurriness in the foreground, and that gives you the illusion of depth. So
yes, that I do. I started doing that at one point, like blurring. I would have a background and everything would kind of look. You couldn't really tell what to focus on.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you recognize that it's usually a character you're going to focus on, but it didn't look good until I started like slightly blurring the background. I think adding the gradient thing would be even more so. Like you said, you can direct the attention to where you want it to go. It gives a better sense of depth, but definitely just putting the background a little bit out of focus.
That's
so well.
Yeah, that's not quite atmospheric perspective. That is selective focus, right? And that is an interesting thing. That can be a tricky effect to achieve. It can look fantastic when you're doing it, because that's what you're doing, like with high-end cameras and stuff like that. You blur out the back. You only focus on like the foreground.
Exactly.
Character.
Yeah.
But it can be tricky to achieve, because if you want to draw the background blurry, it takes a lot of skill to do that. It's actually easier to draw it in properly and then blur it.
That's what I do. Yeah, when I have done that. Yeah, that's what I do. You draw it in, shading and all.
Yeah.
And draw it yourself and like everything, and then blur it. That tends to look really good.
It looks fantastic, but it takes a bit of work to do that.
Sure. But if even if your work's not I will say the better drawn your background is, the better it looks still, even though you're blurring it. Like if you actually draw it, it definitely does help.
Yeah. It does. It definitely use that. Yeah. Selective focus. It's fantastic.
Selective focus. Oh, very nice.
There's a good trick based on that. Like, say, when you're taking photos, you achieve an effect called bokeh, which is what happens with the lenses when they're only focusing on the foreground character. If you have high-quality lenses, the background turns into a bunch of circles, and these blurry overlapping circles. Which looks really good. And that is a very easy effect to achieve when you're drawing, of course, because you just, blob on a bunch of circles, like with your brush or your mouse. Click, 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 or whatever, and you achieve it. So that is a very easy effect to achieve, and it looks fantastic. So,
that's neat, yeah.
And the way you do that is, say, if you've got like the background's a bunch of trees, all right? So what happens with bokeh when you're taking a photo is those trees turn into a bunch of green circles, and the light is a bunch of yellow circles, and that all mixes together. If it's like in a cafe, then the circles will be made of whatever colors are present in the background there. So maybe red bricks and grey tables and all that kind of stuff. So wherever the scene takes place, just keep in mind what colors will make up the mosaic of the background. So, it's going to be grey circles or green circles. That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Just
that's really neat.
Not always the same kind of color. All right. Let's see if I can think up any more. Copy and paste, which is...
What?
Copy and paste, yes.
Yeah.
So, say if you have repeating effects somewhere in your, like, your artwork you're going to use. Like, if action takes place on a train or a bus or something like that. obviously there's going to be a lot of similar things happening there. So even in the most realistic background, say you have a scene happening in a train, and you have your characters talking, and you have there's perspective behind them and a bunch of other train seats. All you have to do is draw the main train seat your characters are in, and then copy and paste the same train seat, just make it a bit smaller each time in the background, and you have a whole scene, a complicated background, complicated perspective, and all you've done is drawn the scene once, and then just copy and paste it and shrink it each time. So always keep in mind repeating patterns or repeating effects.
Yes,
you can do that. It's just speeds things up so much. Like I did once a whole complicated staircase. On a battleship, I have a staircase. The floor is all done with diamond grip plates. And then I've got the perspective of the stairs going down. I've got brass railings and all that. And all that was done by copying and pasting specific elements. So for the grip plate on the stairs, I only do one single area of grip plate. Then I copy and paste that over and over and over and over and over to make up a stair. Then I copy and paste the stair over and over and over. And then what I did was using shape manipulation, which you can do in GIMP and Photoshop, Manga Studio Pro or whatever. You can you squeeze in the areas the top and the bottom of the shape in order to get perspective. So you can manipulate your shape, make it really skinny at the bottom, wide at the top, and all that from just a bunch of simple, very, very simple shapes you've built up. Normally that would take forever to draw that kind of thing. It would just take ages, and it would not be accurate. You'd make mistakes. It would look terrible. So it's just so much easier to construct these things out of shapes. So always keep in mind repeating shapes that you can speed up by doing copy and pasting or manipulation. You don't have to draw all that stuff in. I mean, that's if you're doing a more realistic thing like me, but it even works for less realistic stuff as well. So just keep that in mind.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So what other tips and tricks have I got? Can you think of anything?
Well, I think I've looked into this a bit, and I haven't really applied it all that much myself yet. But the eye is drawn to dark colors, to black, to darker colors. So to pull the eye around I wanted to do a news post about this for a long, long, long time, but I'm still figuring it out how to do it. That you would place your darkness on your comic page in such a way that the eye is drawn across the eye is pulled across the page and down the page through the story of that page automatically by the placement of blackness. So you'll start obviously on the top left and whatever, and then so you have your dialogue, and then you're kind of pulled to make sure that the eye automatically focuses on what you're supposed to see, and it's pulled down to the next line of dialogue or the next action or whatever. So that's something to look into. I think Will Eisner's book talks about that quite a bit. The sort of using lightness near certain areas of the page and darkness there to sort of pull the eye.
Yep. Definitely.
So that you probably know a lot about that, yeah.
That definitely is a factor. Detail as well. The more detail something has, the more focus you'll have on that area. Less detailed areas, the eye isn't going to focus as much on those spots.
Okay, so more detail as well. It's sort of light versus dark thing.
And it's the same
another
thing.
one is to sort of sorry, yeah.
I was just going to say it's part of the same thing, because if you have a lot more detail, especially if you're just doing a black and white page, that will be a darker area because it'll fill in as darker. Whereas your less detailed areas will be, more sparse and lighter. Anyway, go on. What were you saying?
Right. No, that's really good. To have your point of interest, like say it's two characters talking, or it's whatever happens to be going on, to this is, I guess, specific to comics, to allow the eye to sort of bounce from side to side. Say, for example, you have a vertical series of panels. You wouldn't have all of your text on one side and all of your images on the other side. Generally, you'd want to be bouncing back and forth, to keep the eye interested and keep you from glazing over.
Exactly. You don't want to have it like as an illustrated picture book.
Right. Yes, well
people
said.
Actually following the images as well as the text. So, and to do that, like you say, you mix it up backwards and forwards here and there, make the eye follow. Excellent. Yeah. Excellent.
I've seen a lot of like comics that it has that even if it's in multiple panels, like if all the word bubbles are together or even close together, it does have a wall of text effect. Your eye isn't automatically separating, or my eye anyway, isn't automatically separating the panels. I'm just kind of scanning down this long wall of text, and it's like it's hard to read that much in a comic. I find, and that's like the eye gets tired, and it's like sort of. So if you have that going back and forth, not just that kind of simply just like left to right or something, but to sort of kind of think about that and have the some variety in where things are placed.
Yeah. You don't want to have fatigue. You don't want to have eye fatigue, which is what too much text can do. Yeah, definitely. What other tips and tricks can I think of? When do you think it's good to use an overlapping panel? See, this is something that I come across. I like to use these panels that overlap, but it's more an art thing to me. I don't do it like scientifically or technically. I just sort of feel it.
Yeah, there might be some technical approaches to it. I don't know what they are personally, but I would say you go by feel.
Okay,
like you're saying,
yeah, it just,
if that feels right, it feels like the right time or the right vibe to have this overlapping. It's a big moment, or I don't even know if that would be it, but
the only rule of thumb I can think of is always make sure that your panel that overlaps other panels is something that happens later. Never want to do that. Well, I don't know. Maybe you could do that with an earlier panel that overlaps later panels, but to me that sort of feels wrong. I'm not sure.
I would have guessed it would be, you're probably right, but I would have guessed it was kind of the other way around, because you would focus on that first. I mean, it depends on the layout, I guess, the overall layout. It could be something happening at the same time, I mean, like someone busting through a door or something like that, and you have their arms extended and their feet, like they're running towards the camera, if you will, and like the leg and foot that are forward overlap other panels. So you could have this, and then, in the little panels that are being overlapped, you could have the reactions of other people or whatever. That's kind of, I was just, as we were talking, I was just doodling, and that's what I came up with, like sort of she's running forward and like the foot overlapping, and you see just suggests the whole thing of like busting through, and like it's a huge moment or something.
We can make that the title picture for the Quackcast.
It's just a stick person, so I don't know. I have to work on it a lot more.
Stick person is fantastic. That's great. That'll be perfect. We'll use that. Email it. We'll be using that. That's excellent. So, yeah.
I don't know if it's appropriate to use.
Oh no, that's great.
There's nothing there. It's just scrawl.
It's a tip and a trick.
It is a tip and a trick, and the worst picture ever drawn by a human being.
No, it's not. It's perfect. That's what pictures are. They are that's what this kind of stuff is. It's working out and going by the basics and building up from there. So, and it helps to be able to illustrate this stuff in the simplest way possible. So that's an excellent thing to use. I can't think of any other simple tips or tricks to use. I think I've exhausted my store of readily available cheats at the moment.
Well, I bet you've got a lot of other stuff. I feel so silly now that before the Quackcast, I was like, I don't know. Are you sure we can Are you sure you can fill an hour without Pitt and Tance here to help? And of course, you're this fountain of knowledge that stuff that we have barely tapped into.
Yeah, well, I wish
that was awesome, man. Brilliant.
Oh, thank you. I wish I could actually sketch it for people to see these tips and tricks. Maybe I'll include examples of drawings in the Quackcast. It should really be a video Quackcast, and we should record a screen cap of
oh my god, man.
Stuff.
Yeah,
that'd be a good idea. All right, maybe next time. All right, we have reached the hour, the allotted time for our Quackcast.
For a community service.
We've done it. Yeah, we'll never do littering again.
Well, we've still got a couple hundred hours to, you can't litter that much and expect to, you know what I'm saying.
Who knew that human excrement would be that offensive to people? I don't know. I was going to say, I am shocked that you consider throwing a body out of a moving car to be littering. I don't think that was the problem. But, different.
We had a great lawyer. We'll say that. Yeah.
Well, I just thought of it as a human excrement, but
it all connects. Well, this was amazing, man. I learned stuff from those insights. Fantastic.
Hopefully, we'll come up with some more tips and tricks with the whole crew. So thank you very much for listening to Quackcast number 312 with Baines and I. Goodbye.
Bye.